Welcome back to the Dynasty Nerds YouTube channel. I am Marvin Alquin. You can find me on Twitter at @FF_MarvinE. And it's draft season. You guys are probably in the middle of several rookie drafts right now, or you might have a couple more coming up here. So for this video, I'll be focusing on the 2021 rookie class, specifically guys drafted outside of the first 3 rounds who could have the opportunity to be productive for fantasy early on in their career. All right, so we're going to start things off with everyone's favorite day 3 running back, and that's Michael Carter of the New York Jets, drafted with a second pick in the 4th round. And when we look at the North Carolina running backs, of course, everyone is raving about Javonte Williams, who is the better running back. He received the better draft capital. But when we look at the production of those 2 running backs, they actually compare fairly well. Carter had the better breakout age at 18.3 according to Player Profiler. Carter also had the better yards adjusted market share at 21% versus 19% for Javonte Williams. And from an efficiency standpoint, they were fairly similar, both averaging around 6.8 yards per touch, which is actually better than Najee Harris's career number. And of course, when we look at the touchdown numbers, Javonte was the better running back there, had a 26% touchdown market share versus 17% for Carter. And Javonte just has the better size, the more prototypical size that you want from a 3-down running back at the next level. But regardless, we can't ignore the situation that Carter finds himself in and the productive college career that he had. And here with the Jets, his primary competition, it's Tevin Coleman and LaMichael Pirine. Both of those guys averaged below 4 yards per touch last season. Neither were very efficient at creating big plays, evading tackles, creating yards. So it would not surprise me if Carter emerged from training camp as the starter for this team. He has 3-down upside, which gives him a pretty high ceiling. And I wouldn't necessarily reach for him in rookie drafts here. He is, after all, still a day 3 prospect. I wouldn't necessarily draft him in the late 1st or even early 2nd, considering the wide receivers that are in that range. But when it comes to a mid-2nd round pick, I think you go for it. I think Michael Carter has the opportunity here. And if he does receive the touches, I could see him being fairly productive in this Jets offense starting his rookie year. Next prospect I want to highlight for you guys is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Detroit Lions wide receiver. And at USC, what I love about his production profile is that he never had a season below a 24% receiving yards market share. That means he was just involved from start to finish, even in his freshman season, and he maintained that involvement all the way until the end of his college career. He never fell below a 21% wide receiver dominated rating. And in 2020, that was his best season from a market share standpoint. He accounted for 25% of the receiving yards with 478 for his team, accounted for 41% of the receiving touchdowns with 7 in 6 games. Just very impressive in that regard. And he was just involved from start to finish in his college career, and that's exactly what you want to see from a wide receiver prospect. Had an 18.9 breakout age, which is in the 91st percentile according to Player Profiler, so he checks that box as well. Now, the only knock I have on Amon-Ra St. Brown is that he was just never really extremely dominant in any one of his seasons. He never really had that Devontae Smith peak season or Jamar Chase peak season that you want to see from a prospect. But regardless, he was consistently productive from his freshman season all the way until the end of his career. Now he enters his rookie season with the Detroit Lions, drafted in round 4, pick 7, enters a situation where they lost their wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. They have about 289 vacated wide receiver targets. Now, I won't necessarily say that all of those will go to him. Obviously, that's unrealistic. And wide receiver targets don't always just go to the next man up. It goes to the best player. But when the wide receiver depth chart, the top of that wide receiver depth chart consists of Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perriman, I definitely think Amon-Ra St. Brown has the opportunity to break through and potentially lead this wide receiver core in targets and maybe even yards. Now, keep in mind, though, that TJ Hawkinson will still be heavily involved. DeAndre Swift, they're going to use him as a receiver, potentially line him up in the slot. So he'll be relatively involved in the receiving game. But I would not be surprised to see St. Brown receive at least 100 targets and potentially lead all wide receivers on this team in receiving yards as soon as his rookie season. The next player that I want to focus on is Kenneth Gainwell, Philadelphia Eagles running back, someone who I had ranked in my top 5 at the running back position entering the NFL draft. And I just assumed he would have at the very least a late day 2 draft capital, but he slid all the way to the 6th pick in the 5th round. It's hard to imagine it was due to his production profile, considering what he did in his 2019 season. Now, I know he redshirted his first year at Memphis, played behind Darrell Henderson in 2018, but in 2019, he had a season that rivaled the efficiency of a Travis Etienne and a Najee Harris. Gainwell averaged 7.3 yards per touch in 2019. That's better than Najee's 2019 or 2020 season. He exceeded 2,200 scrimmage yards, was an outstanding receiver and route runner, averaged a 15% receiving yards market share, which is just absurd for a running back. Also had 16 total touchdowns and finished his career with the highest career receiving yards market share in this running back class, higher than Travis Etienne and Najee Harris. Now, draft capital wasn't there, though, for him, and he now enters a backfield that's fairly crowded with Miles Sanders and Kerryon Johnson. However, I do think there's a path to touches for Kenneth Gainwell because of his receiving ability. When we look at Miles Sanders' receiving work in 2020, he was just not very good. He was the RB7 in routes run, so volume was there for Miles Sanders, was the RB13 in target share at 12.3%. But he was only the RB33 in yards per route run, RB34 in catch rate, and he led all running backs in drop rate with 15.4%. So Sanders was just not a good receiver. We know Kerryon has struggled with injuries, and that's where Kenneth Gainwell could be fairly involved. It's in the receiving game where he could be the third down running back, a change of pace running back, taking away a couple of carries. Now, it might not lead to that three-down workhorse role that we would have imagined, 20 touches per game. It might just be 10 touches per game to start out for Kenny Gainwell. But I do think that receiving upside gives him a pretty high PPR floor if he were to be involved in this offense. And someone who you could draft in the 3rd round of rookie drafts, I definitely believe that he's worth a gamble there because of his production profile and the upside he could have in this offense as a receiver. All right, so those are just a couple of my favorite day 3 rookies who I believe could have the opportunity to be somewhat productive for your dynasty rosters. Now, let me know in the comment section below, is there someone who I didn't mention that was drafted outside the first 3 rounds that you believe could be productive in their rookie year? And as always, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, hit that notification bell to stay up to date. We'll continue to put out content to help prepare you guys for the upcoming fantasy season.